There's a pattern in history that has destroyed empires people believed were untouchable. In 16th century Spain, silver flooded in from the Americas, and within decades, the currency collapsed and the empire hollowed out. In 1923, Germany, a loaf of bread cost 200 billion marks, savings were erased, and social order snapped almost overnight. In 1971, the United States quietly broke the last tie between money and gold, and the global financial system entered a new experiment that has never ended. Each time, the warning signs were there. Each time, the wealthiest people saw it coming, and each time they moved first. And right now in 2025, the world's dominant currencies are following the exact same pattern. And here's what should terrify you. The people with the most information are already preparing. This is the story of the moves they make before every currency collapse, why they repeat them without fail, and how the pattern behind the 3 moves billionaires make before every currency collapse, happening now, has already begun again. Continue. Before we go through these examples, you need to understand what a currency collapse actually means. Not in textbooks, in practice. This isn't just about money losing value. It's about trust breaking down. It's about a system that worked yesterday suddenly refusing to work tomorrow. At first, nothing looks wrong. Prices rise, but slowly. Governments reassure. Central banks explain. The numbers look manageable on paper, but then something changes. Confidence cracks. And when confidence goes, it doesn't fade. It snaps. This isn't a gradual process where people have time to adjust. Currency collapses move in stages, but the final stage arrives faster than anyone expects. Weeks instead of years, days instead of months. One moment your savings function. The next, they don't. It's not caused by a single decision or a single crisis. It's the result of accumulated choices. Debt layered on debt, money created to solve problems it never actually fixes. Political promises that require more spending, more borrowing, more dilution. At first, the system absorbs it, but eventually the math stops working. That's not theoretical. That's documented history. Spain learned it in the 1600s. Germany learned it in the 1920s. The United States set the conditions in the 1970s. Different centuries, different systems, same outcome. And when this phenomenon unfolds, the public reacts last. The wealthy never do. They don't debate ideology. They don't argue narratives. They watch the pattern, and they move. Let me show you how it happened before and why it's happening again. Let's start with Spain. In 1492, Spain stood at the center of the world. By 1550, it controlled territory across Europe, the Americas, Asia, and Africa. It commanded the largest navy on earth. It possessed the most feared army in Europe. And after the discovery of vast silver deposits in Potosi in 1545 and Zacatecas in 1546, it controlled the single greatest flow of wealth any empire had ever seen. Between 1550 and 1650, more than 180 tons of silver crossed the Atlantic into Spain. In modern terms, that's trillions of dollars. King Philip II believed this made Spain invincible. But this is where the pattern begins. At first, the silver felt like a miracle. Taxes could be lowered. Wars could be funded without restraint. Imports flooded in. By 1560, Spain was spending more than 70% of its state revenue on military campaigns across Europe. The cause was simple. Easy money removes discipline. The effect was immediate. Domestic production collapsed. Why build factories when you can buy everything with silver? By 1580, Spain produced almost nothing it consumed. Textiles came from the Netherlands. Weapons came from Italy. Grain came from France. Silver paid for everything. And that dependency mattered. Here's the critical detail. The silver didn't stay in Spain. It flowed straight out. Merchants, bankers, and foreign creditors absorbed it. Prices inside Spain rose sharply. Between 1500 and 1600, prices increased more than 400%. Wages did not. Inflation hollowed out the middle class while the elite insulated themselves. This is where the pattern truly begins. Stage 1 is monetary expansion without productivity. Spain had money, but no industrial base. Stage 2 followed naturally, debt. By 1557, Spain declared its first sovereign default. It would default again in 1575, 1596, and 1607, 4 defaults in 50 years. Each time, the crown borrowed more. Each time, bankers in Genoa demanded higher interest. By 1600, over 40% of Spain's annual revenue went just to servicing debt. Not building, not reforming, just surviving. But here's where it gets worse. Silver production peaked around 1590. Output from Potosi began to decline. At the same time, Spain's expenses kept rising. Wars in the Netherlands dragged on for decades. The Armada was destroyed in 1588, costing millions. The empire was locked into obligations it could no longer afford. Cause met effect. As silver inflows slowed, inflation didn't stop. It accelerated. The money supply was bloated. Trust eroded. By 1620, Spain was trapped. It couldn't cut spending without losing power. It couldn't raise taxes without revolt. and it couldn't print silver that no longer existed. The wealthy saw this early. Spanish nobles moved capital into land, titles, and foreign holdings. Genoese bankers shifted wealth out of Spain entirely. Ordinary citizens held currency. The elite held assets. By 1640, revolts erupted in Catalonia and Portugal. Portugal broke away completely. Spain never recovered. By 1700, it was no longer a great power. The collapse wasn't a single moment. It was a drawn-out death. But the pattern was clear. That's what currency collapse looks like in practice. Abundant money, declining productivity, rising debt, inflation, capital flight, and finally loss of power. Let's jump forward nearly 300 years. Germany. In 1914, Germany was an industrial powerhouse. It produced more steel than Britain and France combined. Its chemical industry dominated Europe. Its currency, the mark, was trusted. But World War I changed the math completely. By 1918, Germany had lost the war but kept the debt. The Treaty of Versailles in 1919 imposed reparations totaling 132 billion gold marks. That figure mattered. It exceeded Germany's entire pre-war GDP. The government faced a choice: raise taxes and collapse politically, or print money and postpone the pain. They chose printing. At first, it didn't look catastrophic. Between 1919 and 1921, the mark weakened steadily, not violently. Prices rose, but wages followed. Politicians reassured the public. Central bankers insisted this was temporary. Just like Spain, easy money delayed hard decisions. Just like Spain, productivity lagged behind money creation. By 1921, Germany was printing marks to buy foreign currency to pay reparations. That was the trap. Printing money to pay debts denominated in stronger money accelerates collapse. The cause was monetary expansion. The effect was exponential devaluation. By January 1922, one US dollar cost 191 marks. By January 1923, it cost 17,000. By November 1923, it cost 4.2 trillion marks. That wasn't inflation. That was annihilation. Here's the pattern repeating. Prices didn't rise evenly. They jumped daily. Then hourly. Workers were paid twice a day so they could spend before prices changed. Savings evaporated. Pensions became worthless. The middle class was erased. Just like Spain, the wealthy moved first. Industrialists like Hugo Stinnes borrowed massive sums in depreciating marks and used them to buy hard assets: coal mines, steel plants, real estate. By the time the currency collapsed completely, their debts were meaningless. Their assets were real. The same mistake that destroyed Spain was playing out again. Germany printed currency without productive backing. Debt expanded faster than output. Confidence snapped. By August 1923, tax collection had effectively stopped. The government couldn't function. Barter replaced money. Farmers refused to sell food for marks. Cities starved. Social order broke. And then came the political consequence. Extremism thrives in monetary collapse. In November 1923, Adolf Hitler attempted his first coup. It failed. But the conditions were set. A decade later, the consequences would engulf the world. The collapse officially ended in November 1923 with the introduction of the Rentenmark, backed by land and industrial assets. 1 trillion old marks became one new unit. Savings were not restored. Trust never fully returned. Different century, different system, identical collapse. Notice the pattern: monetary excess, debt traps, asset transfers to elites, social breakdown, political radicalization. History was repeating. Now let's look at the most recent example, one you probably remember, or at least remember the aftermath: the Soviet Union. In 1985, the USSR still appeared formidable. It controlled territory across 11 time zones. It possessed the world's largest army. It rivaled the United States in nuclear weapons. On paper, it was a superpower. But beneath the surface, the currency system was already failing. The Soviet economy was not productive. It was extractive. Oil, gas, raw materials. By 1980, energy exports accounted for more than 60% of hard currency earnings. That worked when oil prices were high. It failed when they weren't. In 1986, oil prices collapsed, from over $30 per barrel to under $12. Overnight, the Soviet Union lost billions in foreign revenue. The cause was external. The effect was internal crisis. Instead of reforming spending, the state filled the gap with money creation. The ruble wasn't freely traded, but it was still a currency, and it was being diluted. Between 1985 and 1990, the money supply more than doubled. Productivity did not. At first, the symptoms were subtle. Empty shelves, longer lines. Price controls hid inflation, but shortages revealed it. This is where the pattern accelerates. By 1988, Mikhail Gorbachev introduced perestroika, partial reforms, partial openness, but the system was already unstable. Enterprises were allowed to retain profits, but still depended on state subsidies. The result was chaos, too much freedom for control, too much control for freedom. Debt exploded. By 1990, the Soviet budget deficit exceeded 100 billion rubles. Foreign debt climbed past 70 billion. The government printed to survive, just like Spain, just like Germany. Here's what should really concern you. The collapse happened faster than anyone expected. In January 1991, prices were partially liberalized. Inflation surged immediately. In April 1991, consumer prices rose 60% in a single month. Wages lagged. Savings were trapped. By August 1991, the coup attempt against Gorbachev shattered what remained of confidence. People didn't just lose faith in leadership, they lost faith in the currency. Capital flight accelerated. Those with access moved money abroad. Party elites converted power into ownership, factories, apartments, resources. Ordinary citizens held rubles. The elite acquired assets. In December 1991, the Soviet Union dissolved, but the currency collapse wasn't finished. In January 1992, Russia fully liberalized prices. Inflation for the year reached 2,500%. Savings built over decades vanished. Pensions became symbolic. The middle class ceased to exist almost overnight. Compare the timelines. Spain took over a century to hollow out. Germany took less than 5 years. The Soviet Union took barely 18 months from visible crisis to total collapse. The pattern was accelerating. The causes were identical. Monetary expansion without productivity, debt without growth, loss of confidence, asset transfer, social fracture. By 1993, Russia's GDP had fallen nearly 40% from 1990 levels. Male life expectancy dropped from 64 years to 58. This wasn't just economic collapse, it was civilizational trauma. 3 times, 3 systems, 3 collapses. And every time, the wealthy saw it first. They didn't argue ideology. They didn't debate reform. They exited currency and entered assets, land, energy, industry, foreign holdings. The pattern didn't care about communism or capitalism. It didn't care about ideology at all. It followed math. 3 examples, 3 failures. Same sequence,